Now, welcome back to our hearings for the representation review. Today we've got a morning of submitters that are coming to speak to us. The first is Carl Dean, who's online. It's the organisation is North Canterbury Province of Federated Farmers of New Zealand. It is submission number 606. Carl, we can see you. Thank you for joining us this morning. We've got about 10 minutes for a conversation for you to talk through any points of your submission you'd like to highlight for us, and there may be some questions from councillors as well. Hopefully you can hear me all right, and I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be able to zoom in this morning, I suppose, instead of having to come in to the chambers. So just initially to go through the 4 points of our submission. We do not support the change of the ward boundaries, only in a slight way. We just think that Burnham would be better represented by the Melvin ward, and then that would also leave the Rolleston and Springs ward with the ability to grow, which is more likely to happen than the Melvin, at a faster rate than the Melvin and Ellesmere wards, which would then hopefully mean that we don't have to redo this as shortly as could otherwise happen. We are quite, well, we're content in removing the Melvin Community Board. The main reason being the obviously the by-election last year, which came at a significant cost, and that indicates a bit of internal struggles in the board, and council is probably a much better place to get that done through a councillor. Third point, we don't really have any preference on the inclusion of Te Reo in the naming of the wards, as long as this doesn't come at a cost to the ratepayers, which I can't honestly see how it would. And I'll just quickly read the last one. Yeah, there should just be, ward boundaries should be determined by communities of interest, not just rejigged to fit within the 10% rule. And we do realise that obviously the Rolleston and Lincoln town centres are quite different to some of the other town centres in the district. Any questions?
Great, thank you for that presentation. You have a question from Shane.
Good morning, thank you very much for your presentation submission. I appreciate the practical approach of Federated Farmers. Membership-wise, the total number of members that support the submission would be how many?
So in the Selwyn region, we have about 2,000. Oh, sorry. I think it's 470 farmers in our farming province for salmon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Well, I will feed into what Shane's question was. What was your submission put to all your farmers and they wrote back and said that we agree with the submission, or are you just doing it on behalf of the organisation? That's my first question.
We do it on behalf of the organisation with input from members.
Yep. So my other question is, in terms of the community board, you're talking about the by-election. If the by-election hadn't occurred and the community board had been well functioning, what would be your views as a group on retaining a well-functioning community board in a rural ward of a large landmass?
I think we would probably be able to keep it. It would be probably, our stance would be a little bit different. But it's a bit hard when it's the only community board left. It would be a different story if the Ellesmere ward also had a community board, if there was, for us to then go and say the council should be spending more money would be at odds with our intention to see rates at a lower rate. Because unfortunately these things all come at a cost.
Thank you. And last question, just with the Burnham move into the Rolleston ward, that had been one of the items raised by submitters during our last representation review, which was part of the reason for doing this 3 years later rather than 6 years as we are required to do. And some of that was the connection of Burnham military camp, particularly, and their connection to Rolleston and also West Rolleston School. So the map boundary, are there particular farming areas or particular members of yours that want that area included? To me, it just seems like there's a couple of blocks of land, but is there more than that that you think fits within the Melbourne area?
No, it would be the couple of blocks of those farmland. It was just more based on a population percentage as well, because just look at the amount of representation and then look at the fact that there would be a chance that we would have to revisit this in a very near future with the expected growth of Rolleston versus the expected growth of the Melbourne and Ellesmere wards.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Carl. There's no further questions here. We appreciate your submission. In a couple of weeks, we'll be making final decisions based on the submissions we've received. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we know if the next...
Bede is online. Bede is from the Raumati Community Board. Kia ora, Bede, thank you for zooming into us today. Thank you for your submission. I don't know if you can see us, but we're in the room with our councillors and staff and second morning of our hearings based on our representation review. So thank you for your submission, and today's a chance for you to highlight anything within that submission or bring in your information to our attention. We've got about 10 minutes for this conversation, and there may be one or two questions from councillors as well. So I'll hand the floor to you. Bede, you've frozen and are silent on our end. Oh, there we go. You're back.
Sorry, am I sort of fading in and out there, am I?
You weren't even fading out, you were just solidly there. But you're good now, so start again.
Okay, so yeah, good morning and welcome to Raumati. As you can see, the beautiful little town behind me here. Thanks for having me. I do understand that I'm something of an interloper coming from out of town. So really do appreciate the fact that you've opened the door for me to speak. I do want to be cautious that I'm not here to tell you what to do with your own district. Obviously, that's not my role, and I don't, shouldn't be doing that. But I do just want to really take this opportunity to do a shout out for community boards and support them generally. I will take my submission as read and assume that everybody's had a chance to have a look through it. Welcome any questions to do with that. But just want to highlight the fact that I understand that as a part of a representation review, There's often that question, should we disestablish community boards if they already exist? And when that happened in Kapiti a few years ago, it created an awful lot of outrage. But I have to say the process of asking that question was good for our community boards in the bigger picture. It really did help us revitalise. We gained a new community board out of it because the local government commissioner really saw value in community boards and saw the value in creating a new one, whereas council hadn't seen the value in that. So that was really useful. I think there seems to be a growing push in recent years to maybe get rid of community boards. They're often seen as a little bit cumbersome, and there's often talk about whether there's better ways to do things. What I keep seeing, and I've seen this in another one around the country as well, where people are saying there's better ways to do things, but I'm not seeing evidence of what these ideas, these better ways of doing things are. So I'm always a little bit cautious about getting rid of a community board if there's not something better to replace it already, kind of ready to go. So given that a representation review needs to look at, does any proposal promote good government, I take that measure to be one where it needs to make things better than they already are today. So I think does getting rid of it make things better. That needs to prove So I'm getting a bit of audio here. So apologies if it's not. But I think it needs to be demonstrable that the alternative to the community board is actually better. And obviously that's for you to decide, not for me, but I think that the question that probably needs to be asked of everybody in the process is, does it make us better to do this step? Obviously the Melbourne board would strongly argue that it doesn't. And as a fellow community board, I'm really supportive of their desire to stay alive. Would notice that recently in the Hut, they made the decision to disestablish their community boards, and there's some really big fallout from that. I'm also kind of working alongside those community boards to support them. Local Government New Zealand clearly supports community boards. They had a conference just for them with awards and everything recently. So I take it that in the big picture, community boards are seen as very valuable. And I think that what's happened in the Kapiti example is, since the proposal to disestablish community boards have really gone on to grow strength and to prove themselves of value. So I just want to really just, can you repeat that support for community board broadly? So open to any questions.
Great, thank you very much for that. We've got a few questions here. Firstly from Deborah.
Thank you for your submission. And understanding that community boards do have a place in local government, do you see that community boards going forward could be replaced with a different governance model with less elected representatives, and when council subcommittees have the ability to actually invite non-elected representatives to actually form part of a committee under the citizens' policy process? Do you see that further eroding away community boards or strengthening them?
Probably not sufficiently knowledgeable about the specific arrangements of your council, so it's difficult to speak some of that. I would say, though, on its face, the proposal to get rid of elected representatives surely minimises democracy from where it stands today. If we replace elected people, appointed people, sometimes that can be overly politicised, and surely that takes power away from the community, otherwise deciding who represents them for themselves. I think it can be really useful for committees, certainly, to bring in people ad hoc, depending on issues or circumstance, so there's power in that. But I would say it doesn't have to be an alternative to elected community boards. It can be as well as.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And next question is from Shane.
Kia ora, Sam. Tēnā koe, e Bede. Thank you very much for your presentation. A delegation seems to be one of the common themes that are coming through some of the submissions. Can you tell me what are some of the delegations that your community board has, and whether you have had or have had to deal with dysfunction within any of your boards, and how that's been dealt with in subsequent cost?
I'd say over the years there has been some level of dysfunction from time to time. That's fairly unsurprising anywhere. I think you put different humans in the same room to work together. There was, no, at the beginning of this term, one of our community boards started with a little bit of fractiousness, you might say. They brought in a mediator, worked together, and since then worked very strongly and very capably together. So mediation is a fairly cheap process, fairly quick, and in this example, it was very effective. So I've got quite a long history in terms of dispute resolution myself, so I'm very familiar with mediation, very supportive of that process, but it certainly worked very strongly, very well in that situation. So yes, fractures can happen, disputes can happen. When they do happen, they can be really problematic for everybody. They can cause all sorts of wasting of resources, all sorts of stuff. So I think in any situation like that, the sooner you resolve those issues, the better. Now, there was another part to your question there, sorry. Can you just repeat?
Delegations, Bede. Are you currently happy with the scope of your delegations within your community board? Do they give you enough?
I think that generally, yes. I think you can always argue about whether boundaries we have the ability, for example, naming parks. I'm just working on naming a local park here against, after a local who was very active in the community here for a number of years. That sort of thing is quite fulfilling for a community to be involved in. Other things, I think the role of the community board is fairly undefined, and I think that you end up doing the work that you choose to do yourself. So certainly in our role as a community board, we take things upon ourselves to do actively. We don't sit around waiting for council to give us the authority to do things or tell us what to do. So, for example, last year we made direct contact with Kāinga Ora and set up a community liaison group to deal with them over development that they were doing in our community. We didn't sit around waiting for council to tell us how we should do that. We just did it. Likewise, our vision project that we won the award for, we just got out and started doing it. So I'm always big on telling community boards, look, don't sit around and wait for delegations or authority from council. Just get out and do stuff. If you get it wrong, they'll let you know.
Thank you very much, Bede. Very helpful.
Thank you. Deborah, your light's still on. So, great. Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you, Bede. The second half of your answer was sort of reasonably touching on what I was going to ask. I wanted to know of an exemplar community board around the country that you know of and some of the things that they've done. It sounds like you've given us a great example there. Are there any others in terms of delegations that, or maybe a really good working relationship between a council and a community board that's highly efficient in enabling the community board?
Yeah, I think the one, obviously, other than the Raumati Community Board, going outside of our district, just to kind of extend the conversation, I suppose the one place that comes to my mind immediately would be Wainua, which was part of the Lower Hutt Council, which of course is now looking at being disestablished. They have been enormously effective. Myself and my ward councillor spent a day with them last year. They have been effective in terms of building depth of communication and connections in their community, of bringing people through from the community into local government roles. I think a mayor or deputy mayor at some point was from Wainui. The MP for that area under the Labour government, I think, had a connection with Wainuiomata and a strong link with the community board there. They've been heavily involved in long-term planning for their town centre, which they got a good upgrade, a really nice upgrade. It's actually worth a visit to Wainui to check out the work they did there. Really can't say enough. They've helped set up community trusts to develop work. They're just doing so much. Really impressive. That's one example off the top of my head.
Great, thank you for that. And our final question is from Sophie.
Kia ora, Reid. Excellent name. Hoping not to repeat any questions that others have asked. So, Raumati, congratulations, because it sounds like it didn't exist and then suddenly it did, and you've made a really good go of it. The Malvern Community Board that we have here is actually quite different in the sense that it represents people over a very widely dispersed area, so about 2,000 square kilometres and a population of about 10,000 people. And it is the only community board that we have at this stage, and none of the other wards have expressed significant interest in having a community board. So while I appreciate that Raumati has done really well and Wainuiomata has obviously done great things as well, do you happen to know of any single community boards within a district for a rural area where it's trying to represent 14 small townships? Do you know any examples of those that have done it well? And I totally get the proactive part, because I would love our community board to be more proactive, because they complain a lot about, or they mention delegations, but there's so much that they could do if they just jumped in and grabbed stuff. But yeah, thank you.
I suppose the easy answer to that question is no, I don't. And I suppose it's one of the, obviously I can't comment on the specifics of the Malvern Community Board because I'm not sort of intimately knowledgeable of it, but it's one of those things. The people who want to get rid of the board would probably say, well, it's too big an area for them to cover and it's not enough people to justify it. And they'll say, well, the geography and the number of people make it even more important that we have it. So you get those arguments either way. But I guess the effectiveness of each community board needs to be judged on its own merits, which is something you'll need to decide for yourselves. But I would repeat your sentiment there, which is sort of what I've already touched on, that yes, every community board should just get up and do stuff, not sit around waiting for the direction from council. Absolutely.
Great. Bede, thank you for zooming in today and giving us your thoughts on our RIP review. We're making decisions in a couple of weeks' time, so we appreciate all the feedback.
Cool. Good luck with the decision. Thanks.
Thank you. The next presenter is Terry Glass. Terry, you're welcome along. If you'd like to take a seat at the end of the room there, and the right-hand button will turn that microphone on that black machine, yeah.
Yay, technology.
Your submission is on tables, councillors, submitted number 451. And Terry, you're welcome to highlight anything in that submission and raise anything else with us in the representation review this morning. We've got about 10 minutes for the conversation. And as you've just seen, there's a number of questions around the room may come up after that as well.
Okay. As you can see, no expense spared in my presentation. In true Yorkshire fashion, I'll try and give my presentation for 10 minutes in a Yorkshire accent, but I can't do it. But all of you have watched Some Wine, will have some idea what it is. And their litany would be their start of the karakia, I suppose, would be hear all, see all, say nout. And if you do out for nout, do it for your sin, which is Danish for do it for yourself. That's totally unlike Selwyn. Melbourne's symbol is a rose, and it's the big white rose, all the petals. And that's how I see Selwyn, that it's got all these volunteer groups, council which does great work and does great work motivating locals to come along and attend community functions and really get involved. And I was pleased that I couldn't come along yesterday, and thank you, Pam, for changing the date. My daughter thought she could be in two places at once, and that's impossible. But I looked online, and I thought, goodness, you people have got great patience and perseverance having to put up with some of the things you have to listen to. And you've got this perfect example of a moat outside here, and in Melbourne, Yorkshire, he's called the Lord Lieutenant. And I'm sure in ancient times, he would have had them into the moat for what you had to listen to. So I apologise for some of the things you do have to put up with. And a lot of it is so trivial. And I've had the chance sometimes to overhear people talking, and their ears are being bent by such things like somebody's dog barking after 7 o'clock at night. And I think, how do you do it? And you've got the long-term plan and everything, and enough opportunity to feedback. All right, that's basically it. I could go on, but I don't want to. Thank you for the opportunity. And I have one question to all the councillors. Who have driven next to the Waimakariri River on that road there? Just, could you put your hand up if you've driven on that road?
Which part?
From Oxford Bridge, the bridge to Oxford?
Yes.
Yeah, you've driven down that road? No, well done. This is the reason I've come today is because when Darfield was considering the sewage option, I put in a submission and I saw that it said that I was against it. Well, I wasn't against it. I really thought that, we've got to have a sewage system, but my only objection was to having it pumped to Rolleston. And I thought, there's all that great big horrible stretch between the river and that little horrible road, which could have been turned into like a sewage ponds, wetland above the flood level, and like turned into something really beautiful rather than horrible what's there at the moment. I just thought, that could be developed so nicely. So I didn't object. I just thought, hey, maybe there's an alternative. And it's like representation. Maybe there is a better model. And you do try and contact the citizens through lots of different means. And now that we've got one of the ones working for your Selwyn Emergency Support Team before I resigned was the work that Sue Jenkins, Al Lawton, and Jason Llewellyn have done. They've really motivated the Selwyn gets ready, and we can send out a text. We've got the technology to send out a text to say, oi, something's going to happen. And we've got this, you just watch your kids. They're all on the phone. We can contact them and get a response back saying, I'm in agreement with this or not. You've got your youth council. And yesterday, because I couldn't come, I could read in the latest Melbourne News how many people were opposed to the community board. And I was quite surprised that the number was 300 out of a total of about 500 submissions. I thought, why? Maybe it was because they're having in-house fighting. I don't know what that was about, but those things happen. And on my experience of board of trustees and reserve boards, I've seen it every time, and some people come with their own agenda, and you get a bit of friction, something to be understood, and you try and be as pragmatic as you can, meet their demands, satisfy them, and just move forward. And you try and leave the place better than what you found it. And you only have to go to Home Bush and look at what a Yorkshireman put up there. Probably one of the first powered electricity producing systems in the country. Now it's all just not functioning. And you think, standing on the old shoulders of champions, that's what we're doing. Got to move forward. And maybe we've got to go to texting something, put the problem out in front of people and go, please reply by text. And school populations like something like well over 500 at Ellesmere College and all that, and they're going to be the future. And we might not like some of their music or whatever, but hopefully that we'll get some good ideas out of them. And they have got great ideas. And that's all I'd like to say. and open questions.
Kia ora, Terry. Thank you for coming in and for bringing a perspective about the future and thinking forward for our community. A couple of questions. Elizabeth.
Thank you. I just did a quick flick through your submission. Firstly, you made a comment about the Melbourne News and 300 voted against
Yes.
the community board. That's interesting because I'd done all the stats and I didn't realise. Yeah, that doesn't. It's not sure if that was quite what I'd come with, but that's cool. So there was a huge amount of support for keeping the community board, particularly from Melbourne. What would you like to see your community board able to do in the future if it's retained? And in a perfect world, how many councillors do you think you would like to see out there on the beat, but also sitting around the table here representing Melbourne if there was a choice?
In the fire service, the ideal span of command was 4. So they say that you get a busy person to get something done. If you want a job done, get a busy person. Well, 4 councillors would keep you terribly overstressed and that. So I think yesterday I heard a man say, "Oh, we only need 1 extra councillor at Wollaston to solve the problem that's been put up by the local government authority." And that's the problem. Things are out of our hands. People are dictating from Wellington what we could see as a better standard representation. I don't think giving 1 extra councillor to Wollaston would solve the problem of representation. It's those people who go away dissatisfied, people who grumble about the smallest things that you're not reaching. So, Elizabeth, I think that unless that community board has got the right empowerment, then if it hasn't got it, it may as well go. You may as well just get out like you're trying to do with response teams, anything, sports club, anything that brings a whole large body of people together. You can have your pop-up representation and just say, what do you think? What do you want? Is our long-term goal the right one? Are we going to be satisfied with slow-growing natives? Or will we put up an oak tree that I won't see as a mature tree in 50 years, but it'll be there? What are we going to do?
Thank you. And Deborah.
Thanks for your submission. Look, I'm reading from your original submission.
Yes.
When the questions asked was, do you support the initial proposal to change the ward boundaries and have 8 councillors? And you ticked no. And when it came to, do you support the initial proposal to have no community boards? This would, sorry, my glasses. This would mean that.
Writing, probably.
No, this would mean that the Melbourne Community Board would be disestablished.
Yeah, that's before I realised. Sorry.
And you put no, and yet your written submission and what you're telling us today, you seem to have changed your mind after hearing some of the other issues that are brought forth.
I've sort of changed my mind because I realise that even if it's disestablished, there's not that spare pot of money to go, as I said, to the medical centre, Darfield nurses. So even if it's disestablished, there's no extra money to go. Like even today, I think I should be paying to give the submission if it goes to the Mayor's Fund, and then he can decide who would give it to a charity. But maybe we'd get rid of the tyre kickers who just want to come on and abuse you, find fault with everything. Maybe if it was $100 that you had to sit here and say, here's my submission, it would be better.
Okay.
In that sense, I have changed my mind that by disestablishing it, there's no monetary gain for the ratepayers.
Okay.
Thanks, Terry. And final question from Sophie.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you very much for coming in today. I guess one thing, if the community board is disestablished, then your $25 fee on the rates would be disestablished as well. So that would be a benefit for the ratepayers of Melbourne, at least. you guys are the only ones paying that targeted rate because you're the only ones with a community board. It's interesting though, your suggestion about money going to the health services, which I can totally appreciate. Unfortunately, we can't do that.
Exactly, that's why I changed my mind.
But in the sense that, so I don't know how much you heard of the previous speaker. He was saying that he was from a community board up on the North Island, and that they didn't wait for delegations to happen. They looked at various local problems and were like, okay, where can we form a group that we can help try to make things better just for this specific area?
Yeah.
And is that the sort of thing that, if the community board stayed, would you think that they'd be able to take that and, not worry so much about purely council related things, go straight into community stuff like, okay, how can we support Darfield Hospital, the nurses, that sort of thing, and just take that ball and run with it instead?
I think that'd be great if they had that initiative, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for Elizabeth, instead of asking to see the video on the World Economic Forum, I was going to leave you or sing a waiata to you this morning, and I suggest you go, instead of watching that Economic Forum, you go and get White Feathers from Groucho Marx and listen to the whatever it is, I'm Against It song. Just, I think it's Mental Health Week. It really does relieve a bit of stress.
Thanks, Terry. I'll have to find that myself. I'm unfamiliar with the song, but
I could sing it to you now.
Well, if you want to. No, I've got a note of it here. Thanks. We appreciate you taking the time to come down today and present that submission to us. And sorry it didn't work out yesterday, but we appreciate you being flexible this morning.
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Keep up the good work.
Next presenter is Basil Meyer.
I'm not sure what.
Basil, thank you for coming down today to talk to us. Councillors, this is submission 325 on page 35 of today's agenda. Basil, your submission has been read by everyone here. You're welcome to highlight anything in that submission or bring any new information to our attention today. We've got about 10 minutes for the convo, and you've seen how that's run with the others, so no doubt there'll be some questions at the end as well. I'll hand the floor to you.
Good morning. I made the submission, so just want to highlight the fact that the current system works okay for us rural people. I don't want to see, or we don't want to see, a dilution of representation in this area. Right? Better. And really reflecting back where we live, reflecting back on the long-term plan, there was nothing in it for us rural people. And I really think that what you people do is you should be looking at all of the Southern District, not just the ward you represent. We're part of it. We pay rates. We get very little for our rates. I made that comment a number of times. And I do worry that there is an increasing division between rural and urban. And I've read some of the submissions which I'm able to read online. And it's clear that probably the residents in Melbourne and Leeston are more aggrieved as what's happening currently. So keep the wards as it is. I would like to see more emphasis to address rural residents, rural ratepayers' concerns. It's great that the focus here in Rolleston is, as it has been, provide assistance with public transport to get that. So I got no problem with that. But yeah, we're part of it too, and we have missed that majorly. In regards of the community boards, I think community boards, what happened in Melbourne a year and a half ago wasn't great. A lot of people weren't impressed with what it cost us ratepayers. And the community boards, in essence, it comes down to the people involved. If you've got a cohesive team and they can actually they can actually drive some initiatives and look after the communities they representing. So yeah, I support the retention of community boards, whether they could be strengthened by having a more formal format that is up for discussion, but I believe in essence, it's the people within that board. And as I said too, in my long-term plan, your submission for me is very prescriptive, very restrictive. You know, I would have liked to see a more open availability of expressing our views and concerns. Yeah, so I think that's about it, yeah.
Okay, Basil, thank you for presenting that today. There's a few questions in the room. Firstly, Phil.
Oh, thank you for coming in. And I'm not rural. I'm from here, but I have a great passion in the fact that I'm not making a statement. I'm just there is a question coming. I've got a great passion in the fact that Selwyn is this wonderful rural urban mix, and I think it's actually the jewel in our crown. You obviously are rural. You're feeling that you're not represented, and is that fair?
I think that I think, as I said before, it's we got good representation. We got moved into the Ellesmere Ward, even though we're very close to Darfield. You know, we focus on Darfield, not Ellesmere. So we don't go to Leaston or Southbridge. So, but yeah, I think that, as I said before, it would be great that councillors from other wards understand and accept our needs and our wishes. And I think that's where it's been lacking. The focus has been on Rolleston, Lincoln, whereas our rural areas, whether it's Arthur's Pass, Greendale, Windwhistle, Porata, Southbridge, Dunsandel, I think they have missed out. That's what I mean. So, yes, we got good councillors in our ward. But, yeah, I think overarching, there needs to be more buy-in and acceptance from other ward members that were part of it. Because it will drive division. And, you know, you can read the media 7 times. You can go and read some other comments. You know, it is at times quite confrontational what's been stated.
Thank you. I really appreciate the candor of your answer. Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you for coming in. I wanted to ask you, I think you sort of faded in and out a little bit on the microphone, but I think you were mentioning about the questions. Was it relating to this submission? Were the questions a little bit difficult to grasp the concept around? Was there anything that we could do to have improved them?
Yeah, I think they were ambiguous in a way. It would have been, I think it would have been easier maybe for some people to just explain on a plain page as to what they want to see going forward. It's been prescriptive in a way that, do you support the current system, or do you want to see boundary changes? So, yeah, I think if we had just a plain page, you know, what do you want to see going forward, would have been probably teasing out some of the real views from ratepayers more.
Thank you. And the final question is from me just around the boundary and changes, and just saying, you know, obviously you face towards Starfield, and the line that we've got at the moment is reasonably arbitrary, and it cuts through between you and Darfield and also up through between Hororata and Te Pirita, and for historic reasons about numbers of people to make a plus or minus 10% rule work. If we didn't have to follow that rule quite so carefully, where do you think the natural boundary is? And is it around the high school zones, because that's where, you know, families have generally connected with each other, or where would you draw the line between Melvin and Ellesmere?
Well, I think the previous line probably were more indicative as to how people associate with. As you say, you know, Darfield High School, our kids went to Darfield High School. So, and yes, it's a numbers game, but, you know, is that the best way to deal with it? You know, it's geographical in a sense that, as you say, you know, the schooling, the sports, I think previously it was done at the State 01 or thereabouts, so whether Burnham was part of Ellesmere or Melbourne, I can't remember, but, you know, for us to be allocated to Ellesmere, and I may add to that, we actually never have received notification that the ward boundaries changed, and we found out at the last election that, hey, you know, you're not Melbourne anymore, you're Ellesmere.
Okay, so somewhere near State Highway 1 is what you're
Well, I think that probably the other side of State Highway 1 on the eastern side was probably more associated with Ellesmere and townships as they would be with Darfield.
Cool, thank you. Deborah.
Thank you for your submission and the fluctuation in the boundaries. Would you see that Ellesmere would be more aligned with Springs as opposed to more aligned with Darfield?
I don't live down there, so that's for me hard to judge. I just think that the previous boundaries did more reflect who we are, where we are. So Ellesmere to be part of Springston, no, I can't, you know. I think you need to ask people from the other side what they view on that topic. It's for me, it's hard to say, and I don't think it's for me to judge or make comments to that respect, because it's not really. We don't live there, so as I said, we don't go and shop in at least.
No, I was just trying to establish communities of interest with regards to the fact that you found yourself in the Ellesmere ward at election time, as opposed to previously being in the Melbourne ward.
Yeah, Hazel, so thank you for answering that.
I can't answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in today and presenting those views. It's really helpful for our decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next presenter is Gareth Payne. Gareth, we're running a wee bit early. I hope you're okay with presenting now.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Cool, thank you. So, councillors, this is submission number 175 on page 40 and 42 of today's book.
Yeah, but it probably doesn't. It's not really going to work here anyway, so I've got it printed out. So I'll just work it out.
Oh, okay. So would you like to distribute that to everyone afterwards?
Sorry?
Would you like to distribute it to everyone afterwards?
You can do, yeah.
Okay.
On the PowerPoint, on the PDF I sent you.
Yeah, that's on. So do you want it? Would you like it displayed on the screen?
No, because I won't be able to read it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll just give this back to you.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the written submission. Councillors have seen and received that, and today is just a chance for you to highlight anything new or bring anything new to our attention. We've got about 10 minutes for the conversation, and the floor's yours.
Cool, okay. First of all, I'd just like, my assumption with council staff is everybody here, your main priority is the benefit of the community and the district. Is that a fair assumption? Yeah.
That's part of the oath that everyone takes when we become councillors.
Yes, cool, because I just wanted to establish that. So I've done 10 years in the military, and I've done 10 years in corporate consulting. Now I'm self-employed, and I'm a bit of a professional bum as well, basically, okay? I try and do the minimum I have to. And I've been engaged in probably the last 3 submissions, or over the last 3 years, I've been engaged in 3 submissions, and there's some trends that I've seen as I've done those as well. So in terms of the actual representation review, in terms of question 1 and question 2, the actual options that you've put towards the communities, in my view, they reduce and they remove the infrastructure for local democracy. And so I just don't understand why you did that. More money for councillors, I don't think this will lead to better quality councillors. The councillors here, you shouldn't be doing this for the money. You should be doing it as a community service, okay? And if you are here for the money, you're in the wrong job and you're not fit for purpose. Okay, so I think we need to reinforce the local democracy and the community engagement, which is the complete opposite of what you've been doing as a council, in my opinion, and from what I've seen over the last 3 to 4 years. I think you need to delegate more authority to the community boards and the various residents associations. And I think we need to expand the whole principle of community boards as well. Maybe not for Rolleston, maybe not for urban centres. You don't have the same geographic coverage. You've got everybody condensed in a nice little geographic area. Maybe the councillors are appropriate for that. But for rural communities, I don't think it's appropriate to remove the community boards. And if anything, Ellesmere should probably be trying to get theirs back, in my opinion, and not getting rid of it. Okay, question 3, why? 99% of the district, I'm guessing, don't speak Te Reo, so why would you do this? And 100% of the district probably definitely speak English, or they should be. Yep, so why would you do a name change? And why have you mixed that in with a representation review? I mean, I just don't understand that. And then I'm curious about how much money this has all cost as well, and has come out of the ratepayers' pockets. And where was the consultation done? How did you come to ask that question? Yep. So I did some analysis on the results. There's no point putting it up because it's not going to display on any of the screens you've got here. But basically the bottom line of it is, and you know, there'd be a margin of error in what I did because I knocked it out in 4 hours because unlike you guys, I'm not getting paid for my time to do this, but I'm doing it because I think it needed to be done. But the bottom line was you had about 80% of the people of your submissions saying no, no, no to your 3 questions. Okay? That's the bottom line of it. Okay. Now, in terms of the representation, basically, what I think in terms of what the community is basically telling you with those 3 questions is a firm no, and it gets stuffed. Okay? I'm not happy about it. The people where I'm living, well, a lot of people weren't even aware that this review was going on, and even fewer of them actually understood the implications of what it meant, okay, until it was actually explained to them. So to have that, I just don't understand it. Okay, so my experience in the submissions that I've been involved in today, there seems to definitely be a rural-urban divide, okay? You've got rural communities, which I'd consider myself from, very different set of value sets to what I'm seeing in the urban submissions. Now, maybe it's because there's an active minority group that are smashing in submissions from the urban areas, and maybe that's not representative of the entire urban areas. I don't know, but this is just from what I can see as an observer. Okay, and to me, from what I'm seeing, the whole consultation process is biased to urban special interest groups. So that's the way I'm seeing this. When I go through and I look at the submissions, and when I listen to the submissions on either side of me. A bit late today, so I didn't get to hear the couple before me. Okay, so when you're making these submissions, I think they need to be geographically based. Okay, so as I see it, you've currently got urban submitters basically committing rural populations to decisions that don't really affect us, or to facilities and assets that we don't benefit from, and that we're being committed to paying for those assets and those facilities. That's my view of it, and that's the view of a lot of the people around me as well. The other thing I think, when you're making your submissions, you need to focus on the people who are going to actually bear the costs of these decisions as well. When you're actually, like when you have your district plan and you present those options. And the other thing is, there's never options for a 0 rate increase or a negative rates increase. Okay? If you're going to give people decisions, you should be giving them a range of decisions, okay? In every organisation I've been in, especially the military, that's always what you have. You have a worst course of action, you have a best course of action, or you're most optimistic, okay? And you should have at least 3 decision points in there that give you those range of options. Okay, in terms of the mayor, so last year, I think it was last year, I went to the town hall and I heard you, and I'm pretty sure I heard you commit to no rates rises above the rate of inflation, okay? We've now got rates increases that are double the rate of inflation. Yep. Now I challenged you about this and I got you to comment on Facebook. And in your response, you had a couple of responses. The first one was about, well, we had the submissions, we had the consultation process, and this is what people asked for. But the other problem is that at that meeting, you said, like, no rate increases above the rate of inflation. When you challenged it, you then said, oh, but the infrastructure inflation rate's gone up by 30%. But I think you know as well as I did that me and everybody in that room believed that you were talking about the general rate of inflation, okay? So I think you were being disingenuous, and I don't think you were being honest with the people that you were talking to in that town hall meeting, and that shows complete lack of integrity. So Chief Executive, like I've heard you've spoken to me a couple of times as well, okay? Now, one of my councillors, I spoke to her and she let me know that, I think this was a year or two ago, that we've got a new Chief Executive. And I said, oh, that's great. From the local area? No, she's not even born in New Zealand. I said, okay. And I said, why is that? I said, why can't we have somebody from the district as a Chief Executive? And she told me we don't have the qualified people because the council's so big, we don't have the people in the district that are used to running an organisation of this size. And my response to that is, well, that's a clear sign the council's too big for the district. Okay? We should be able to run this with the people who are actually from the district and have ties and loyalty to the district. I'm not a big believer in corporate governance. Okay? And I've been in that sort of environment for 10 plus years, and I've got very good reasons for the views I hold on that. Okay, at the Sheffield meeting you were at the other night, you said to me that loats are artificially low. Now, from my perspective, I have no stormwater infrastructure, no wastewater, no water supply to my actual property, okay? And my rates have doubled in the last 10 years, and now you want to double them again over the next 10 years. I think we're going to more than double them, by the way. I think it'll go up higher than that. So I'm getting almost no critical services. The main road servicing me is State Highway 73. And you've doubled my rates for basically no increase in any sort of services that I can see. You're proposing 27 million for a cycleway. You've got a part-time cultural executive officer, I'm guessing on 100K or more a year, even for a part-time position. There's other examples I could give. You've got population growth, which I'm guessing would have given you a natural increase in rates. You should have digitisation leading to efficiencies in your council operations, okay, and you should be getting economies of scale, but I'm just not seeing any of that, and you're still increasing rates. And at the same time, you're telling me that rates have been artificially low. So this just isn't adding up to me, okay? And that just means I have no confidence in people who say that, okay? And I almost see it as gaslighting, to be quite honest. Okay, another thing, when you're doing your consultations and this representation and participation, why aren't we ever consulted on the big decisions, okay? Why aren't we ever given options? Like population growth. Why have we expanded the size of the population in the district? Yep, and why didn't you actually ask for, why didn't that go to a public consultation? I'm not sure it ever has. And things like privatisation of like community assets, okay? Or like the Three Waters, and I know the council hasn't done it yet, but I'm guessing that, you know, the mayor is part of, or LGFA, and I know LGFA were big supporters of the Three Waters proposal. And my belief is you're probably going to try and privatise the assets anyway, probably through a public-private partnership arrangement. But that should be consulted on with people as well. Okay, so I'm just curious, which councillors for this representation review, who actually supported the options that were presented to the community? Can I just have you raise your hands?
Gareth, sorry, I'll just let you know that the 10 minutes is coming to an end. So if you'd like to make any final comments about the representation review, feel free. In the end, the decisions of this council and the question you've just asked are owned by all of us, and is the decision of all council to go out with the representation, and we'll be making final decisions next week, which is the point of the process right now, and allowing you to have your voice into it.
So everybody basically agreed to that then?
Whether or not everyone agrees to it, we own it as a council, and that is a council position. And
well, I think the public should know, and the ratepayers should know, which specific councillors actually agreed to the proposals that have come through.
And the minutes hold that information if people want to see it.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Okay, cool, thank you. Any questions from councillors? Shane.
Tēnā koe wā, ko Shane Epeha tuku ingoa, e ngā uri ahau o Ngāti Tūmata Uenga. Appreciate your service. Are you aware of Ngāti Tūmata Uenga?
I have no idea what you're talking about, to be quite honest.
That's the iwi of our Defence Force. which I am
Yes.
was a servant
Yeah,
of.
yeah, I am. I was.
So as a public servant, I appreciate your service to our country, as I have myself have, and potentially more of us have here served our country in one form or another. This is a public service and has never been considered to be a role for remuneration, but for our community and to continue to serve our country. To hear your words, I appreciate your views, your opinions, and in the good governance, take those into consideration. You've spoken about the increase in your rates as a rural landowner. One of the was brought in was a district-wide rating. Previously, it was a deferred system. Would you be favourable then to going back to a system of deferred rates away from the current system?
Just give me a quick explanation of what you mean by deferred rates and how that works.
Currently, the rating system is district-wide, so it's a contribution from district-wide for a collection of rate. Before that, it was a different rating system. Differential, yes, which members that have been here longer than me will be able to explain more clearly. But if what you're saying is you feel unfairly rated, would that be something that would be more favourable to your submission?
Yeah, I think, and what I'm saying is I think the rates, and how decisions are made to increase rates and various projects that lead to those rates increases, it should be specific to the geographic area and the people in that area.
Thank you.
Basically, is that what is that what this deferred rating approach leads to, is it?
Yep, thank you. And the next question is Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you. I'm not going to ask which area you're in, but you've mentioned you're rural. Do you feel we've had some differing views from various rural groups? So Federated Farmers spoke this morning and they said the only reason that they opposed the main reason they opposed the community board was because at the moment it's costing the Melbourne residents 50 cents a week to keep it, and they said they wanted to reduce their rates by taking that targeted rate, so only Melbourne pays for the Melbourne Community Board.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, cool. If the council, because we've had submissions both ways, if the council was to look at implementing the opportunity of community boards across all the areas, would you be in favour of that because it's an increase of rate to everybody, or do you feel that we should be prioritising the decrease in rate and therefore removing that element of the community voice?
Okay, so in terms of in my view, you're talking about local democracy here. So so for my property, I'm charged $25 a year for the community board, say. Okay, so in my view, I'm prepared to accept that. To me, that's a worthwhile cost in terms of keeping that local democracy. I don't think I should get to say what happens in Ellesmere or Springs or Rolleston, though. That's for those communities to make that decision. And the same applies in this representation review as well. We shouldn't have people from outside of Malvern telling people in Malvern whether we should lose the community board or not. That should be a decision for Malvern ratepayers. Yep. And we pay, it's a targeted rate, doesn't affect the rest of the other ratepayers. So that cost lies with the people of Malvern, not with the wider district.
Thank you. And Malcolm.
Yeah, thanks for your submission. You made a lot of stoke on the rural-urban divide. I'm a councillor in the Springs ward and have been for off and on for nearly 30 years. I represent 8 different communities in my ward. You have 14 different communities in yours. So to label everybody else as urban, I think is a bit unfortunate. I don't think the people of Springston, Taitat, Mochikara, Broadfields, Green Park really do think that they are urban. They are also rural ratepayers. So there are rural ratepayers that don't just live in the Melbourne area.
And I wasn't trying to, I'm using the term.
You are.
That's good, Malcolm. I think you've made that point. Thank you.
I would like to ask you, as you support the Melbourne Community Board, if you can give me an example of an issue that the Melbourne Community Board have dealt with on your behalf or your community's behalf in the last 2 years that wasn't dealt with by one of your local councillors.
Well, at the moment, they're dealing with quite a lot of the flooding up in Springfield, is my understanding of it.
I've been looking at their minutes and I don't see a huge amount of traction on issues in the minutes of what the community board has actually been achieving in the last 2 years.
Well, how much they minute it, I don't know. So I can't say.
I would have expected a man
Malcolm,
with a corporate background
if we just let Gareth
to
answer the question.
see-
Thank you. So Gareth, did you have anything else to say to that question?
Well, to that question.
Yeah.
Well, no, my understanding is the community board is engaged in various ways. And I gave the example of Springfield with the flooding that's happened up in Springfield.
Okay.
And that would be another, and then that raises the topic. Like, why the local community, like the last time we had severe flooding up there, it was Kills Contracting that my understanding of it is, no direction from the council, had to go out and start unblocking the drains to prevent wider flooding. Okay, so the council wasn't there sorting that out.
Yeah, and so thank you for your submission today. That matter is an Environment Canterbury matter that we are looking to pursue with them as well, because we believe that overland flows and river management sit with Environment Canterbury, and have supported the community in that. So thank you for raising it again with us, but that is certainly something that we're well aware of, and our staff have been working to find a long-term solution for Springfield and the community. We appreciate the views around representation that you've provided to us, and we'll be making final decisions in the next couple of weeks. So thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Gareth, do you want me to take a copy of your submission of your...
Councillors will take a break and adjourn the meeting till 11 o'clock, and Trevor Tague is the next speaker. Kia ora everyone, welcome back to the hearings, and we'll reconvene for the representation review. We've got two speakers to close out the presentations today. Firstly is Trevor Tague. Trevor, thank you for coming along today. It's submission number 541 and pages 45 and through to 48 of today's agenda. Trevor, we've got about 10 minutes for the convo. You've got the mic on and the floor is yours.
I think it's right, Mayor Sam. Just remind you that I am speaking for Heather today as well, so it is two submissions. She's unable to be here today. Thank you very much for allowing the public for having their say in the council's ward system. Now, is this just a smokescreen like the rates and the LTP was, that you've already made up your mind and that you are not going to listen to what the ratepayers are saying? I hope it's slightly different from that. Any lateral thinking person in their right mind wouldn't even consider having one person and no community board in the Melbourne ward. This ward is huge, approximately 70% of the whole area of the Selwyn Council. It's the playground for Selwyn, Christchurch, with 6 ski fields, Mount Olympus, Porter Heights, Broken River, Craigieburn, Cheeseman and Temple Basin. Many lakes and rivers, high school huts and many other recreational opportunities. If you think that you can run the council from this room with 2 less councillors, I think that's a big mistake. Or is this greed, less councillors and more money per councillor? The area of Melbourne needs at least 2 councillors and community board to serve with also 14 communities, in my opinion. I'm just going to give you some examples in the middle of my presentation of when council hasn't been listening. The build-up of the shingle and broom in the Little Kauai riverbed, right in the middle of the bridge, spreading the water. I notified the council and said the river needed maintenance, honing out the shingle on each side and placing it on the sides. Nothing was done. Hence, 30 metres of one approach was washed away, was lost. I told them. 2 leaning willow trees across the north side of the Big Kauai Bridge, about a 40-degree lean. I've notified the council verbally, then I wrote to them, and there was a reply in writing. The trees were safe and they would continue to monitor them. One blew across the road about 3 years ago during a gale at night time. Just as well it was at night time, because if it had been during the day, somebody would have been killed. Leaning trees and branches through the Kauai cuttings at the moment is disgusting. I told one of your council staff at the drop-in meeting at Springfield, if they were prepared to listen to me, that I could help with the flooding in Springfield. There's 2 scenarios there. The man, said it wasn't the council's problem, it was just 3 waters. Here we are, still with nothing done. Maori names, in my opinion, and my wife's, are unnecessary. Why have 2 names when one English name is more than satisfactory? The Maoris never had a schools, libraries or land transport, but they've all introduced Maori names. Why? I'm not racist. I have many, many Maori friends when I was in the shearing world over a long time. The corruption within the council. When I asked could they provide me with how many bridges and large culverts, how many kilometres of sealed roads, shingle roads in the Melbourne ward, they promised they would get back to me. To this day, I haven't heard. I contacted HEB. They said no problem. It's all on the computer. 1 week later, I spoke to the same person. He informed me that his computer was blocked and he couldn't give me the information. So much for transparency. I could inform you about corruption over many early years, but I'm not going to go into that today. This proposal proposal has been unnecessary and total a waste of money. As I pointed out in the LPTP, ward numbers are grossly unfair. The councillors in Rolleston could probably walk round their ward before breakfast on a Saturday morning. The Melbourne ward pays more than their fair share of rates, and you want to cut our councillors and community board out. An old merry friend of mine would use this saying, up here, down here for dancing. Our request is to leave the Melbourne ward as is, with one name being Melbourne, 2 councillors and a community board working with the people and the council taking notice. I hope you have listened and common sense will prevail. And I'd like to have a question to ask you. Is there anyone in this room that knows the meaning of Kauai? It's actually a Maori name. Does anyone know?
Tell us, Stuart.
I beg your pardon?
I mean, there's the Kawhai tree, but Kauai would mean, what is your water?
Anything with WAI means water, it means in between the water or the joining of the waters. And if you have a look at the map, you'll know that Kauai Bush is surrounded by waters in 3 ways, the hills in the background. I just thought I would test you because you people seem to be quite keen on Maori names. And this is from Heather and Trevor Tay, 2 submissions, Kauai Bush. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart. Malcolm, question.
Yeah, Trevor, I'm very interested to hear of your dealings with the Kawhai River. You said you contacted the council over those issues. Did you not first contact your community board?
No.
So why not? Because that's what they're there for.
Well, there's a lot of times the community board bring things to here and you take no notice of it anyway. So I had been dealing with this council directly for probably about 33 years.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. I just been through the minutes of the community board and I'm just looking to see how effective they've been operating in it. And that's why I asked the question.
So you can't blame them for that.
Do you go to your councillor first or the community board? So you obviously come straight to your little council. Thank you. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Yeah, a little bit on a similar note. I just wanted to know, what would you like to see your community board empowered to do more? And is what the example Malcolm picked up something that you would like to be able to go to your community board and they come back here and you start to see results? Do you have any other examples of areas that you'd like to see your community board more active in your district?
Yes, well, I would like to see the community board being more active. I've always been of the opinion that the community boards are there, but in actual fact, their voice isn't always heard as good as it should be, in my opinion.
Thank you. And Shane.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Trevor, for your submission. Appreciate the reference to Kauai and where you come from. Do you take umbrage at all to the name Kauai being a Māori name, given reference to your...
Oh, it was there before I was born. I mean, I thought it was very clever that when Kauai Bush was named, that we had one Maori name and one English name. But it is between the waters, and it is a beautiful place with a huge amount of native bush, and we've contributed some more of that, as Malcolm will tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor, that brings us to the end of the submission. Thank you for coming in and presenting it to us on behalf of yourself and of Heather.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope your recovery goes well, Drew.
Pardon?
I hope your recovery continues to go well.
I'm sure we'll make the most of it.
And I'll try and find time this summer for that. Mr. Bush.
You'll be welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Bring the bottle, but make sure it's full.
Okay.
The next presenter is Bruce Davey. Bruce, thank you for being here today. Councillors, this is submission 446, pages 50 to 51 of today's agenda. It's the Arthur's Pass Association presentation.
Okay, so do I see it somewhere?
Yep.
Yes. So is it projected somewhere to the
Yes, it is. We're just shot.
Okay, great.
Cool. And then I can just swap on there for you. Is that okay? Or do you want to do it yourself?
I can do it myself.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Good. So the mic's on.
So this one.
Just change mics.
Yep.
Good.
Time's yours, Bruce. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk about the representation review. I'm here representing the Arthur's Pass Association. So the Arthur's Pass Association is a representative body representing the landowners, batch holders and residents of Arthur's Pass. So we have more than 100 different members in our group. So we've canvassed our members and the committee, and I'm here presenting the views of those. The Arthur's Passes Association is looking to kind of celebrate and preserve the area's heritage. We do a lot of conservation work in conjunction with the Department of Conservation in the Arthur's Pass National Park area, and manage all sorts of activities within the village. And I'd say we've had a very positive interaction with the councillors in the region. We do find them very responsive. We do have a very good interaction with the councillors to date. You'll see, I know you've read the submission, so you'll see that we oppose the first of the two resolutions, the change to the representation and also the disestablishment of the community boards. I'll talk later, but we do support the renaming of the board. We think it's fantastic to be celebrating some of the pre-European history of the region. The situation now, so we have two councillors who are representing the Melvin ward. The information we have is they travelled about 20,000 kilometres last year, and I did some calculations and assuming, unlike certain ECAN councillors, that they don't speed, if we take a kind of an average 80 kilometre an hour speed limit that they're driving at, then they're spending 6 weeks in their car travelling around the community of Melvin. That's 1.5 months they're spending travelling in their car, meeting with the communities. And you may say, why do they need to go and meet with the communities? Well, I run a tech company. I have many video conferences every day all around the world, and I can say video conferencing is no substitute for being in person. If I can be in front of our customers, and as in my role, I find that much more satisfying, much more interactive, much just better for establishing the relationships than trying to get video conferences over poor connections. So video conferencing is really no substitute for being in person. As the previous speaker said, Melvin is a huge ward, I think 5,000 square kilometres or more. A big part of the region, I think it's something like 150 kilometres from the kind of the northern boundary to the eastern boundary from Arthur's Pass down to Rolleston. So it's an enormous ward for people to service, and moving to one councillor, which is the proposed solution, is in our view, unrealistically reducing the representation of people in Melvin. We just won't get to see our councillors. As the previous speaker said, with some of the other wards, the proposed wards, it's very easy for the councillor to walk around them. Melvin, the distances are just so enormous. And the previous speaker also commented on the rates distribution. Melvin does pay a lot per resident. And the needs of Melvin are very diverse. We have the flat country, Hororata, that's very different than Castle Hill and Arthur's Pass with the alpine areas and some of the activities that are going on there. In Arthur's Pass, we have the highway going through. We also have the rail facility. And for example, some of the discussions we're wanting to have about dark sky, they're going to need interaction with the Whakatahi and also New Zealand Rail. And so having strong representation from the council, I think, is going to help us with some of those activities. So I know that you were presented with an alternative, but we actually think the idea of having 9 councillors across the 4 wards, and maybe if to get the distribution right, rearranging the boundaries slightly between Melvin and the Ellesmere wards. And that also ties in, if we made the boundary between the Melvin and Ellesmere run pretty much along State Highway 1, that ties in with some of the community engagement of the regions between the current boundary of the southern boundary of Melvin and State Highway 1. Children go to schools, there's more interaction kind of north up to Melvin, so those areas, than down further south to Ellesmere. And that I don't have the exact numbers. I couldn't find the exact numbers of exactly kind of the mesh layout of the numbers, but I'd be encouraging council to have a look at whether that boundary could be moved to go with a new situation where there'd be 2 councillors remaining in Melvin and still with the 4 wards. I'm going to move now to community boards. So our preference would be, our strong preference would be to maintain 2 councillors in the Melvin ward. Particularly if that doesn't happen, I think that the community board is going to be essential for gaining the interaction with between the communities, the 14 different communities in the council. Historically, our relationships have been more with the councillors than the community boards. But I think if we're reduced to 1 councillor, then we're going to have to rely much more on the community boards. And finally, the ward name. The Arthur's Pass Association do have a strong preference for inclusion of the Te Reo in the name. And we would support either the Tawera or Tawera Melvin. The second one is more aligned with what's happening throughout New Zealand, with the Maori name first and the European name second. But our preference would probably be is one of those 2 as a preference as a community. And I think that's a submission. I did have other things to say, but the previous speaker had covered some of them as well. So any questions?
Thank you, Bruce. Fishball Shane.
Was it? Oh, yes. Sorry, I was I dropped off. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bruce, for your time with the association as well, and your very clear submission. Tō toka inga kōrero o te reo Māori, ngā mihi mahana. You've mentioned technology and the challenges therein. Do you consider, and thank you for doing the calculations and driving time as well, that's some serious drive time and very interesting. Do you consider 6 weeks effective and efficient in terms of drive time to face-to-face? And you've mentioned no substitute for face-to-face time, which is effective. I'm interested in your own business, critical decision-making, balanced with drive time. How do you use technology to inform critical decision-making?
Yeah, our drive times would be more like 30 hours in an airplane, because most of our customers are in Europe and the United States. So we are forced to use video conferencing, but it is no substitute for being the subtleties, the reading of the room. You just get so much more by being in person. I think it's difficult for me to transpose kind of the international business that I'm interacting with respect to Melvin. But I would say spending an hour and a half in a car getting from Hororata to Arthur's Pass for a meeting is well worth it several times a year. So I think there's just so much more is gained by that in-person interaction.
Thank you.
And Elizabeth.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. I really appreciated reading this when it came through, and I noticed that you had, I think it was about 120, is it, members?
Yes.
Yeah, and you said you've canvassed them all. I'm very impressed. I'm just wondering if you can tell us which ways you did that, because it gives us sort of a insight as to effectiveness in terms of canvassing membership.
Okay, we have committee meetings every 6 weeks, and there's 12 people on the committee, and then we as committee members reach out to individuals within the community as well. So that's I think a very strong community and board, and we do have those regular kind of catch-ups as the committee, and then feeding into the getting input from the wider community.
Fantastic. And then that feeds into my second part, which is, do you have much to do, because you've got a Taura member for your community board, do they come out to any of your committee meetings, or would you like to encourage them to come out so that you have that feed in?
So to date, the councillors have been quite regular attendees. The community board have been less regular. At our annual general meeting of the society, the community board and the councillors do attend. I would like to think our preference would be to maintain the strong relationships with the councillors. I think that, but if we drop to one councillor, then the community boards are absolutely essential, I think, to maintain that link.
So what would you see a community board member being able to provide for your area? What are you hoping that they will, if they're given more responsibility, obviously?
Well, the discussions we're having, there's all sorts of things like this. There's upkeep of the roads, upkeep of the verges, upkeep of the gardens, kind of the public spaces within Arthur's Pass, and they often get dropped. There's a whole bunch of, and this whole question of lighting is something that we really want to move forward with as well, to get Arthur's Pass as and the whole region actually, the kind of that Alpine region as a dark sky area.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any final question from Sydney?
Yeah, Kia, thank you very much for coming. I'm quite impressed that you've come down from Arthur's Pass for the day, and you run a technology company from Arthur's Pass.
Actually, I don't live in Arthur's Pass. I have a batch there. I get up there as much as I can. I do want to retire up there, but I'm in central Christchurch.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I got a couple of questions. Interestingly, you mentioned about the 20,000 kilometres. By the way, I did some sums as well, worked out that actually that kind of works out, not saying that they don't do a lot of drive time, neither of them are here, but actually it works out to about driving from their home addresses to council once or twice a week through the year. So I guess that's an unfortunate thing. It doesn't matter who your councillor is, they will be doing a lot of drive time because they live further out than I admit. I live in Williston. I walk here in 10 minutes.
Yeah. But even if somebody is remote, though, they've still got to get to Arthur's Pass.
They do.
And so,
Correct.
and to Castle Hill and to Hororata and Windwhistle and all of the other communities.
Yeah. So one question I had was, you've mentioned about with your suggested map that it aligns more with the schooling.
Yes.
But you also mentioned that you wanted to keep West Melton in there.
Yes.
That doesn't align with the schooling because all of the West Melton kids go to Williston College.
Okay.
So I was just
so I have some incorrect information there.
Okay.
But
they did used to go to Darfield, but it changed some years ago. I guess so that was kind of like, how much weighting do you think that, or is it more about just trying to make the ward the size that is required for two councillors?
I think we need two councillors for Melbourne. You look at the huge side, and if it makes it more palatable and for the local government and central government to have kind of bring other areas, I think that the State Highway 1 makes more sense for the boundary to run along State Highway 1. But it's more trying to have a solution that can be kind of can work for the powers that be. So.
Fair enough. Okay. And the other question was, we've only had a couple of resident association chairs come and speak with us. One of the options that was presented around if there was not to be a community board anymore was so that was to suggest that the chairs of various township groups perhaps meet with councillors more regularly as like a direct forum, rather than it being sort of, because at the moment a lot of the community board members go to some of these township groups in the place of a councillor, but then in some ways they're kind of then filtering the views of those township groups when they bring it to the community board. Would you prefer to meet directly with councillors long term?
Do you mean the whole council or just the councillor?
Probably whoever the councillors are for Malvern, but potentially depending on what the areas. Yeah, you have answered that actually, because you already mentioned that you already have a better relationship with councillors.
Very strong relationship with the councillors, the current councillors, and we feel we can call them, we can contact them, and they're very responsive to what we need. So.
Would you as a chair be interested in
just to be clear, I'm not the chair. The chair is in Wellington today, so I'm presenting on behalf of the chair. Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be appropriate then to say whether or not there's a community board? Would you be interested in there being like a Malvern resident group sort of forum where you can all get together and see how many of your issues you share and how you can work together?
I think any interaction between the different communities is a positive thing. I wouldn't like to see that at the exclusion of each region being able to have a relationship with the councillor directly as well. So,
fair enough. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Phil. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure you were going to allow
I'll let you.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Sorry. Hi, I'm Phil from here, from in Rolleston. You said there's 12 people
on the council or on the staff?
Someone's. Good morning.
Okay.
My name is Philip Dean. I'm one of the councillors for Rolleston.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry, but I should have started with that. So you've got 12 people on your
committee.
Your committee. The area you cover is from Arthur's Pass down. How far out of Arthur's Pass do you cover?
Well, it's Arthur's Pass Village and Beely Spur.
Okay.
So and there's really nothing between, apart from Flock Hill, there's nothing between us and Castle Hill anyway. So, and then there's a Castle Hill Community Association.
You meet every 6 weeks?
Sorry? On average about every 6 weeks, yeah.
Do you allow remote access to your
community? We do, and it doesn't work very well. Yeah. I can tell you.
Is that because of the technology side of it, or because of the is it the technology that does not means?
Yeah, the technology is poor. I mean, the voice quality, the breakouts, it just doesn't work well. So if I can get to a meeting in person, I will absolutely get to that meeting in person if I can.
That's great. I really appreciate the insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. That brings to an end hearings. Bruce was the final presenter today. Councillors, we have had 2 days of a day and a half of hearings. All of the submissions that have been received were accepted yesterday, and decisions on this and final deliberations is in 2 weeks' time. We have set aside 2 days for that. Not that I'm expecting it'll take 2 days, but there may be some things that need a bit more reflection time as things are raised. I wouldn't mind now though if councillors have got particular questions that they're thinking in the back of their head, this information would be helpful ahead of the hearings, ahead of the deliberations, that we give a heads up to staff. And if you have those things now, that's great. But if you could email them through to Sharon, and we can make sure that that information is available for the first morning of the hearings, because I'd rather we did them on the Thursday than unnecessarily needs to come back and bring everyone together again on the Friday. We will if we need to, because that'll be the process we run, but if you can have your conversations with one another and think about the types of info that's going to be helpful ahead of time and email that through. Sharon, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Councillors, I circulated this morning some of the papers from the Representation Subcommittee from the 12th of March, just to give you that background information around some of the options that were considered. You heard a number of those options yesterday, so I just thought it was really important that you had to hand the breadth of options that were discussed.
And just to note that Kelvin wanted to follow up from his presentation yesterday, and so he has sent through some further information based on councillors' questions yesterday. Sophie?
Yeah, I might have some other ideas later, but more than anything, when we get like a summary of the different submissions and everything, it'd be really good to know the breakdown for the different questions and comments, which area they are coming from, and if possible for Malvern to break it down to which subdivision as well. Just because it'd be interesting to know where where West Melton, for instance, sits on that sort of thing, or how Burnham thinks about going from Ellesmere to, well, you know, those sorts of questions where it's around the boundary or the potential loss of councillors and stuff like that.
Cool, thank you. Phil, did you have a question?
No, no, it was the same.
Deborah?
Look, we had some really good submissions that came from a place where their options were not canvassed or put in front of us. That's the fair way to say it. And I'd like to try and understand, if we did put one councillor in Rolleston, what would that solve? What would that remain the status quo with just an extra councillor in Rolleston? Remember, the 8 is not a foregone conclusion. We have to approach this all with an open mind. and we have to base it on the submissions that we've actually heard and been presented. And for me, it's important that we don't rely on the silent majority. We actually take note of those that actually took the time to put in a submission. And when we look at what we've done with the submission process, I think we had 119 submissions for our 50-year plan. We've had over 600 submissions with regards to this particular process. So we all need to give it due diligence with an open mind and look at the options and realise that we are representing our communities and not our own view here. So I want to highlight that particular and just understand what would happen if we just put one more councillor in Rolleston and it might have made it up to 11. What would be the plus or minus, or how would that be affected? Or do we need to consider the plus or minus and give it the due diligence that we have when we've got such vast community of interest that's been presented to us with regards to the area? So that's my question, and that's why I want to actually. I'll probably repeat this, but that's why I want to ask the question.
So the first part of your statement is true of all hearings that we run through. That's why we have spent 2 days here, read 600 submissions, have employed staff to make sure that we understand exactly where our community is coming from. So, thank you for saying it again, but I think that is what we are all here for. And there's no less expectation on councillors because that may or may not have been said previously. The numbers and data, there were multiple options put to the Representation Review Subcommittee, and so the work that they have done forms a part of this work. This is ongoing work to be able to consider where we're at, and some of the data you've requested has already been circulated to councillors and has formed part of the decision to get to here. And if there's new information that you've asked for, we can make that available. But the key for us is, yes, there's a submission process, and yes, we need to hear, but we also are controlled and bound by the legislation that determines what outcome we come to. So there's some breadth and some change that we can look to, but we also have to keep in mind what are the restrictions around how we have fair representation and also the plus or minus 10% rule. So there's a range of things that Tim and his team will bring before us, and I expect that when we come to the deliberations, there could be a fair chunk of the beginning of that deliberations with an information download for us all to run through and remind us of where we're at the process and what our decision-making powers actually are, because there's lots of things that I've heard discussed and brought to our attention that are outside the scope of what we're actually able to determine through this process. So that'll be made clear to us in the papers that you receive. Elizabeth?
In the papers that we receive, will there be a bit of an update to refresh what the changes were in the Electoral Commission in terms of, look, I'm not all about the remuneration, but in terms of remuneration changes, so that we can have those graphed for the size of the council, whether we increase or decrease? Is that stuff going to be?
Remuneration is outside the scope of this representation review, so isn't a consideration that will be presented.
I mean, it was put in the representation review booklet, just saying.
Any further things that people would like to have info for, or questions they've got in the back of their minds? No, feel free if you think about it over the weekend to send it through to Sharon and we'll make sure it's in those papers. It brings us to the end of our deliberations. I'll close Una here, te pau, kia wātia, kia wā.